Hi, classmates. This is Akia Isom, and I did my paper on the Navy's Family Advocacy Program and the Domestic Violence Offender Treatment program that the Navy does specifically. So this is just a brief introduction. In 1976, the Navy established the Child Advocacy Program to address child abuse. And then 3 years later, they added spousal abuse and changed the name to the Family Advocacy Program. The program originally fell under the Bureau of Medicine, BUMED, and then in 1996, it became multidisciplinary and became part of the Fleet and Family Support Center. Family Advocacy Program, or FAP, is a Department of Defense program, so it is mandated to exist wherever the military or the Department of Defense actually moves families. So the FAP process, I'm going to try and go over briefly just to kind of give you an understanding of how people get into treatment. The Family Advocacy Program provides case management and clinical support for child abuse and domestic violence cases. And the way that cases are referred mainly is through command referral. And the way that happens is if any service member is arrested for domestic violence, or the command becomes aware on any level that there is a domestic violence situation, they are mandated to report that to Fleet and Family. If they go to Navy Medical, that's also going to be reported to Fleet and Family. And then they also get cases referred from CPS because there is a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, between CPS and Fleet and Family that if a case of child abuse or domestic violence occurs that involves an active duty military family, CPS is going to let Fleet and Family know. And then also under the Privacy Act, clinicians at Fleet and Family have to disclose through their informed consent. They let their clients know that they have to disclose any incidents of domestic violence, and so that would also be referred, kind of an in-house referral. So there are two types of cases. There are unrestricted and restricted. Restricted can only happen when the victim is the one who discloses the abuse, and that'll typically happen if they're disclosing it in a counseling session or meeting with a chaplain or someone that is a reporting option that can keep it restricted. And then in that case, then the victim will get a case manager, and the case manager in that situation will only be ensuring that the victim receives services. And every case is actually given a case manager. It's just the role is different when it's unrestricted, which is what we'll talk about now. If it's unrestricted, then the case manager will gather information to be presented to the Incident Determination Committee, or the IDC. The IDC is not a disciplinary board, and they're basically going to decide based on the preponderance of the evidence, which basically means 51% chance that it happened versus 51% chance that it didn't, if the case meets criteria to be an incident. And for physical abuse, they use any act of non-accidental force. And for emotional abuse, it's threats or withholding of finances. After the IDC, all cases are sent to a clinical case staff meeting known as the CCSM. And at CCSM, a treatment plan is going to be written for every member of the family, whether they were present or involved in the incident or not. The CCSM is going to consist of a FAP representative, which is a tier 2 or supervisory clinician who's been post-licensure at least 2 years, tier 3, post-licensure for at least 2 years, a CPS supervisor, the case manager for the case, and then every victim of domestic violence is also assigned a domestic abuse victim advocate, and so the domestic abuse victim advocate coordinator is also going to sit in on the CCSM. And if the case met criteria, the command is strongly recommended to approve or mandate the treatment. And from talking to some of the clinicians here, unless it's a special warfare unit or the SEALs, typically they are going to mandate that treatment if the case didn't meet criteria at the IDC. So in the Navy, if the Navy can only mandate treatment for service members, and they're only going to do it for service member offenders, they're not going to mandate treatment for service member victims. They don't ever mandate anything for victims. And then if you are considered to be a treatment failure, you can be brought up on administrative discharge. And to be a treatment failure, it doesn't, you can be a treatment failure for a lack of substantial participation, and also if you reoffend after a significant amount of treatment or after finishing treatment. So that's pretty interesting. So the offender treatment plan, typically ideal is that it consists of group therapy, but there are times where it will consist of individual and group therapy, and times where it would just be individual depending on the person's schedule or what that particular person may need. And the Family Advocacy Program uses the Choices Program, which is a domestic violence intervention developed by Dr. William Adams. Right here, this is actually next to me. This is actually the book that the participants in the group will get. It's, says the Choices Program, How to Stop Hurting the People That You Love. And Dr. William Adams is actually in Long Beach, which is pretty interesting. And then this is actually, this one I was actually able to scan and provide for you guys in the zip file, is the provider training for the Choices Program, Domestic Violence Intervention. So that's pretty interesting that I was able to provide that for you guys. So the Choices Program is an evidence-based cognitive behavioral model. It focuses on personal responsibility and eliminating the 3 telltale signs, which are denial, blaming, and minimizing in the offender. So the groups are discussion-based, and the members are always to challenge each other when they hear each other, denying or blaming or minimizing anything that they've done. And the treatment focuses less on, power and control or actually teaching what domestic violence is or looks like, but more on skill building and tools for healthy relationships. The treatment goals include helping offenders. The goals are to increase their self-awareness, to improve their communication, to improve self-advocacy, to learn to acknowledge their warning signs, and then also to learn to recognize escalating conflict. The offenders are continually challenged to take responsibility. Every 4 weeks, they have to tell the referring incident and be challenged by their peers and the facilitators if necessary. And then the offenders may often have automatic thoughts that they are powerless, so they abuse to take the power back. It's the dynamic of, I feel like I have no control, so I abuse people to gain control. And so if I can learn that I do have control, then I don't need to abuse people to gain control. And so it's that thing of them learning that they never were powerless, but that they've possessed the power. And so they don't need to be abusive. These are some of the program interventions that are in the Choices Program. This is one of the main ones. It's called the box, and hopefully you guys can see that closer. If not, you'll be able to see it in the facilitator's guide, which I attached. And basically, the box is so that when you have a problem, you want to be able to stay in the box to solve it. So this is the box with the timeout, and it's basically saying that if you're starting to feel some of your warning signs, that you should call a timeout, and then, follow the rules of a timeout, which are here. And then if you follow those rules of the timeout, then you can come back and be able to solve it in a good manner. But to realize that when you're not at your best, then you shouldn't try to solve problems then. And then the goal is that eventually you'll be able to solve all your problems by staying in the box and not have to, take the timeouts. The other thing that's below here, I'm turning so hopefully you guys can still see this, is these are the warning signs of when you're getting out of the box, the behavioral, cognitive, and physiological signs as far as like racing heart, if you're yelling or cursing, if you're awfulizing the situation, if you're feeling like I'm going to teach you to respect me. So those cognitive thinkings or those behaviors or those physiological responses are signs that they're out of the box. And so the Choices Program actually teaches offenders about those signs and to be aware when they're feeling that way so they can get back in the box. Another great intervention that is a part of the Choices Program is core beliefs. And so if you see here, it's talking about core beliefs and then an activating event that activates those beliefs, and then the automatic negative thoughts and the negative emotions that come with it. And then once you get to the root of knowing what those core beliefs are and how they create automatic negative thoughts, then you can create new core beliefs that are activated at the same event, but then you have automatic rational thoughts and positive emotions. So, part of the curriculum is that they're challenging those core beliefs. And sometimes in challenging those core beliefs and helping to get to the root of those core beliefs, they may use a dysfunctional thought record. They also use an intervention called the choices chain, which is basically like, I chose to do this, but I should have done this. And so it's really about, when you're saying I chose to do, you can't be blaming or minimizing or denying. When you're saying I chose to do, you're taking responsibility that I chose to do this and I should have done something else. So they use this with the referring incident as well. And then also their top problem solving skills. I really wanted to get to effectiveness in my paper and find research that showed, if the Navy's program overall was more effective than in the civilian world. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that the Choices program curriculum is only 26 weeks versus typical offender treatment, which is 52 weeks. And so I wanted to see if that was more or less effective, but it really hasn't been studied, so there really isn't any empirical data. One thing that the Lundy reading said was, this is kind of a summary of it, of course, that change in DV offenders is the process to taking personal responsibility. And so the Choices program does create an environment, especially with them having to, retell the incident every 4 weeks and being challenged on to not deny, minimize, or blame. The program really does try to teach them to take responsibility. And then another article that I read and used as a reference in my paper talks about that the success of a program is measured by their ability to help motivate offenders to change. And I think that the Choices program does really take the time to teach offenders about their core beliefs and their automatic negative thoughts that are wrong. And I think that that does really open up the door to see, oh, wow, maybe I do need to change. Not every DV offender is going to change. We know that. Some of them may have a victim mentality. Some of them may feel like, they're never going to grow or change. Some of them, may actually have personality disorders. And then that's a whole nother ball game. But the Choices program does show offenders their misbeliefs and their dysfunctional thoughts in a hope that they will take responsibility and change. And so most research has shown that in order to be successful in a domestic violence offender treatment program, you need a cognitive behavioral program. And that's really what the Choices program is. So I wanted to show you guys some resources that are pretty cool that they have at Fleet and Family. This is not all the resources that I included because I did a lot of basic DV resources, but the ones that I'm going to show you in this presentation are just the ones specific to Fleet and Family where I work that would be good for victims of domestic violence or child abuse. This brochure, and again, like the scanned copies of these brochures are all in the zip file, is about the fact that, Fleet and Family does offer free counseling for service members and their family. They don't even have to use the TRICARE for it because it's, covered as a service on base. Also that there are life skills classes that are offered and taught at Fleet and Family. They also have the domestic violence program. And like I said, anyone who, alleges that they were a victim of domestic violence is allowed to have access to a domestic abuse victim advocate. Fleet and Family also does have credentialed child counselors. So they do child counseling. They also run groups in the community at schools where there's a high military population for children's groups, helping them to adapt and cope with, military life and other things like that. They also have, this is not for any family that's been a part of the FAP program because of the danger associated with that, but we have a home visitors program called the New Parent Support Program, and they do home visiting. They also teach parenting classes, and it's basically to any active duty families that have children under the age of 4, and any children that are seen at Naval Medical Center San Diego. They have kind of a questionnaire that they do as part of the well visit, and if they feel like they're kind of like one of those borderline families that could potentially lead to abuse if like intervention doesn't happen, they're referred to the New Parent Support Program, and they get a home visitor coming out there to teach them some skills so that hopefully they don't end up as a part of the FAP program, which are the resources that I was showing you before. And then also the Navy has an EFMP program. This brochure I didn't scan in the thing, but it's the Exceptional Family Member Program. It's for families that have disabled, mentally disabled or physically disabled, and it can really